The four largest institutions, Bank of America, J.P. Morgan Chase, Citigroup, and Wells Fargo, control half of all bank assets in the United States.
In his book, Supercapitalism, The Transformation of Business, Democracy, and Everyday Life, former Secretary of Labor Robert B. Reich explains corporations. He states, "A final truth that needs to be emphasized, the most basic of all, is that corporations are not people. They are legal fictions, nothing more than bundles of contractual agreements." Reich adds that the triumph of supercapitalism has led indirectly and unwittingly to the decline of democracy.
Nevertheless, in spite of the myriad views on the subject, we must find adequate tools to analyze the long series of financial crises that we have encountered in our countries since the end of colonial times. Furthermore, we must develop a language in which to discuss the nature and causes of these crises. So, calling upon our muses in the forms of Jeremy Bentham, John Stuart Mill, David Ricardo, and others, we seek a method of systems analysis and an institutional view, a chaos theory that properly is called dynamic systems theory. In addition, a corollary subset of chaos theory is catastrophe theory. As systems evolve, their various components interact and co-adapt over time.
Often, significant events known as chaotic attractors occur. These attractors have major evolutionary consequences. For example, an asteroid striking the Earth may cause an ice age. This is a case of what evolutionists call punctuated equilibrium, meaning that such a catastrophe would have widespread ripple effects for better or worse. Next, we will explore the nature and causes of the dozen economic crises that have struck the United States from the days of its Constitution in 1789 to the first Great Contraction that began in 1929, known as the Great Depression.
We recognize the importance to understand financial crises and related events that continue to occur. Economic fluctuations come in regular waves, some long and some short. Also, these waves may be harmonically related to one another and to cycles of nature. We witness such phenomena at sea during a storm, from within the earth when we feel quakes, through the air whenever the wind blows, or we hear music. Regardless of the nature or origin of the waves, they all behave similarly. The attack occurs as the wave develops and rises to its peak. At its peak, it sustains briefly, a transient. Then, as it has risen, the wave decays. The shapes of waves vary. However, universal constants remain among them.
I understand what you are saying and agree with it. When we know that there is a cause, the variation of the solar activity, which is just of the nature to affect the produce of agriculture, and which does vary in the same period, it becomes almost certain that the two series of phenomena, credit cycles and solar variations, are connected as affecting cause.
Wonderful. With your permission, I would like to approach this subject from the meta view of cultural ages. Then, I would like to narrow the focus by considering the long economic waves and the shorter business cycles. As the data collected by Dr. Sidney Homer only goes back to ancient Sumeria, let's confine our discussion to the more recent cultural ages. I've asked Dr. Rudolf Steiner to summarize these ages for us.
The third age of our current great epic was the Egypto-Chaldean Babylonian culture that extended from 2907 to 747 BCE. Astrology and geometry arose in Egypt that taught the Egyptians how to treat and cultivate the earth. The next age for which we have data is the Greco-Roman age, which flourished from 747 BCE to 1413 CE. In this age, individual human essence begins to unfold in Greek art. Humans take hold of their own beings and seek to create it as an image in space. Later, jurisprudence arose, Roman right, which governed matters between citizens of Rome. The fifth cultural cycle is the one in which we now live with our materialistic civilization. It is the time in which man has descended most profoundly into the external world. We know how to apply the forces of the spiritual world to our physical environment to produce modern natural science with its technical appliances, yet these complicated technical means are used to satisfy the same needs after all.
Thank you, Dr. Steiner. We recognize that during each of these ages, culture developed with a pattern of a wave, evolving slowly for a millennium, reaching an apex, and then declining.
We consider that our civilization is the making of civil persons. Isn't that correct, Mr. Disraeli? Yes. Increased means and increased leisure are two civilizers of man. Furthermore, the health of the people is really the foundation upon which all of their happiness and their powers as a state depend. Finally, the best security for civilization is the dwelling. Upon properly appointed dwellings depends the improvement of mankind. Ladies and gentlemen, before we become too immersed in the material realities of these ages, let us remember that it is ideas that shape the course of history. It is ideas, not vested interests, which are dangerous for good or evil.
Thank you. Your observations provide us with an excellent framework for our discussion. Let's look at the long waves discovered by Kondratiev in 1922. These waves each extend a length of 50 to 60 years on average. Given these estimates, each cultural age contains 40 Kondratiev waves. The difference in wavelength depends on whatever we are measuring, industrial or agricultural data. Originally, Kondratiev measured his agricultural wave as 58 years. However, the industrial wave is approximately 50 years. We suggest that the average cycle has shortened gradually over the past century due to rapid urbanization. In the United States, 80% of the population grew its own food in 1900. However, after the First World War, farm failures and a growing demand for manufacturing labor led to a massive migration to cities. Over the decades, agricultural production became mechanized. Now less than 5% of the labor force grows food for the entire population in 2012. Furthermore, economic and social changes have occurred concurrently with expansion of sovereign governments as they attempt to redefine their roles.